Everyone's selling AI agents, but no one's really explaining the difference between something like an N8N workflow and something like an actual agentic workflow. Because the things that you see in most of these sales tools or SEO outreach systems, they're not true agentic form. In this video, I'm going to show you the difference between both of those with the theory and the prac, and we're going to be migrating one of my tools from an N8N workflow into agentic form. So let's get into it. Now I should start this video by saying if you just came here for the tool porn, this is not the video for you, because there are a lot of concepts that we're first going to get into before we look at the practical examples. But the practical examples aren't going to be rooted with tons of pretty little colors and going through each of the blocks. It's more to show you the amazing context behind the theory that we do. When we do the tool migration, it's really going to show you the strengths of something like an agentic pattern. So if you really want to understand why this is so useful to you, then you need to stick around for the entire video, because we're going to map it all together piece by piece so that you finally understand what you should be giving to clients and how quickly you can actually deliver things to clients using these new agentic workflows. So this idea came about because I didn't really understand the difference between using N8N with LLM agents in them to build something agentic versus using true agentic workflows with Python in something like Visual Code or anti-gravity. So I deep dived into all of this stuff, and then once I truly understood it and saw the power of it, I was like, wow, we need to move from using N8N into using something like anti-gravity, simply because the tool that I'm about to move into there has about 7 LLM agents within it in order to achieve its goal. It's fully researching prospects, reaches out to them, tailors personalized messages, stuff like that. I have a video on what it does in the link above here, but for the most part, we're going to be moving away from that, and you'll soon find out why. So stick around for this little bit of theory, because we need to anchor everything we're about to see in some form of understanding. So at a very high level, everything starts with instructions. Your journey from a single prompt to a fully autonomous system, it represents a fundamental shift in whatever it is that we're doing when we're now working with these tools. So when AI first came out, everyone was like, one off, write me an email, tell me a joke, something like that, whatever. Super basic. Then people started to learn we need to give them roles and all of the other things that come along with that. And we would start to use basic markdown to get better results from our prompts. So you might say something like, you're a sales expert, write me an email to the CEO of a SaaS company offering them AI automation services based on XYZ. Cool, that's a role-based prompt. Then you might have something like a standard operating procedure. And this is what we use when we're looking at agentic workflows, because we want to give it a set of instructions, which is our end goal, the thing that we're trying to achieve. And it's going to know all the tools it can use in order to get us where we want to go, so that it can think for itself and work autonomously. Again, that's at a very high level. This isn't scientific stuff here, but I'm trying to keep it light so that everybody understands what we're doing. So the shift is we're moving from one response into multiple responses that it can work essentially by itself, as if you have an employee that you don't really have to pay a lot of money for. So the core difference that we look at here is who makes the decisions and when. When we're looking at N8N, think of it like a factory, because originally N8N, Make, Zapier, all of that stuff, they were made for automation. They were around long before AI came out. Maybe not N8N, but the other two were. And their goal was deterministic workflows. So I have this process and I wanted to do this, then that, then that, then that. Basically automation. But you have to make the decisions before it returns anything. So you have to go in there on your canvas and lay everything out. You have to know your workflow, know exactly what needs to be done so that you can get this thing done. If this happens, do that. So the system executes exactly what you built and only what you built. With agentic workflows, you essentially have this employee working next to you. So you give it the standard operating procedure and it will make decisions during that runtime. And that's a fundamental shift, because if it has the standard operating procedure and it knows how to do its job, it's going to keep trying to do its job until it gets the goal done. It has its tools and it will work until it gets there. So essentially what we're saying here is the system adapts as it happens. And that's it. That's really, at a high level, the biggest difference between how these two things function. We will get into some of the nuance soon about, obviously you can do a lot of this within N8N, but stick around a little bit longer and you'll see why we don't necessarily want to do that anymore. So agentic AI thinks by doing something called the react loop. So reason, act, observe, and then repeat. In a real example, let's say we're talking about finding a CEO's email. We've built the standard operating procedure so it knows what we want to do, which is find a whole bunch of emails. We've given it a bunch of tools that it can use in order to achieve that, so it knows where to find them in the standard operating procedure. And then it starts its loop. So the reason here, I need to find this person's email. Step 2, search LinkedIn. Step 3, observe. I found a profile, but there's no email listed. So we need to go back. Reason, LinkedIn failed, try Apollo. Act, search Apollo. Observe, email found, john@company.com. done. So then we know that we're one step closer to our goal. So the N8N equivalent of that would be you need to pre-program everything. If LinkedIn finds no email, then you need to call Apollo. You would have to physically build out that thing within your N8N workflow. More if-then statements, you need to bake in error loops. And again, this doesn't account for any of the errors that could happen along the way if it can't find the thing for one specific issue. But we'll look at all of this in the practical example very soon. So if it's still not clicking for you yet, don't worry. But this kind of autonomy can bring on problems. You have to understand that as humans, we want reliability. We want determinism. We want to understand in business that if we're trying to do something, it's going to happen because we're working towards it. Same thing again, if you're using the employee analogy, you hire this person to work next to you to get the job done. You give them a bunch of tools and you know based on their performance, their track history, whatever, that they're going to get this job done for you. And for the most part, that is deterministic. If they do what you're paying them to do, you should probably hit your goals. But the problem here is that AI, or LLMs in this case, they're probabilistic. They can make their own decisions, and sometimes they can completely hallucinate. So the challenge here is that we want the probabilistic system, but we want it to be marginally probabilistic and way more deterministic in order to achieve our goals. And that's where the code comes in, because code is deterministic. So N8N is deterministic, like we've spoken about, if then, and the chain carries on. It's reliable, but it can't adapt. So that's why we need to mix the two. So we solve this with a pretty simple solution. At a high level, it's just three components. We have the standard operating procedure, which is how the system is allowed to function. It shows us our end goal, all the tools it can use to get there, and how you kind of want this thing to act within its realm. Then you have the manager level, which is the AI in this case. This is the probabilistic system. It reads the standard operating procedure and it makes routing decisions. And then it provides reasoning on all the things that it's doing. So what we're doing in the standard operating procedure is giving this super probabilistic system some form of determinism in order for it to get to the endpoint that we want it to get it to. Essentially like guardrails that get us the determinism that we need. And then the employees are essentially our tools in this business. They are there for a specific purpose. That could be Python scripts, it could be APIs, it could be something like that. And they're super deterministic. They have one goal and they will do that specific thing to wherever it is that we want to go. So when you merge these three things, you have the flexibility of human intelligence, but you've merged it with the accuracy of machine execution. And that's why this is such an amazing system. Again, because it self-heals as well. So it can think and go through these things until the SOP is achieved. So just to nail that home, let's bring this in. If we look at the 429 error test, which is what happens when you hit an API rate limit that I had magically just happened before I made this slide deck. Say you're scraping 50 profiles. Apollo returns 429, too many requests. With N8N, your workflow is going to stop completely unless you have baked something in yourself. Now, even if you did bake something in yourself, it's going to send the error message to Slack and then you're going to log it. You're going to have to fix it manually. You might add other nodes, having learned from your mistakes and not doing things properly in the first place. That takes downtime, that takes effort, stuff like that. With Agentic workflow, it's going to see that error. The Apollo rate is limited, switching to Phantom Buster, because in your SOP, you might have mentioned, hey, we have these two tools that you can use in order to get the job done. And it continues automatically. At a worst case, if it couldn't achieve its goal, it would at least tell you about it and say, Apollo is down, I can't do anything, what do you want me to do? In which case you could then say, fix it. And it would figure out other options for you to fix it. Again, I'll show you this very soon, it's pretty amazing. So the N8N factory stops at the walls unless you bake something else in, whereas the employee climbs over them. And that's what we want here, this agentic workflow. Now you might be asking yourself, when would I use N8N? Do I still want to use N8N and stuff like that? And for me, I think yes, you definitely still want to use N8N. I think it's definitely going to shift, despite the fact that we can build agents inside N8N. The question now is, because it's getting so simple to build actual agentic workflows now, do you still need to do that? Probably not. But we look at the difference between when to use what here at a high level. So for N8N, if you have high volume stuff with zero variance, it's probably going to be lower cost for you to use N8N at this point. If you have identical actions that just happen over and over again, in like traditional automation, maybe a little bit of AI added into it. So you might have one LLM that's not doing a whole bunch of thinking. It doesn't need to do any crazy routing and stuff like that. It still makes sense to use N8N. If your costs are super critical, then yes. But again, that depends. Because if you're using something like Lindy or Relevance AI, you have to pay a lot of money to use those services because they have drag and drop front ends. If you're doing everything in Python yourself in an IDE, then it can be a lot cheaper. But also if speed matters. So if you have a process where nobody needs to think at all, then it's no brainer. Just use Make, Zapier, N8N, whatever. Because again, completely deterministic, just needs to get the job done. So if you want to scrape 1,000 profiles, dump it to HubSpot, job done. That's a 3-step process, no thinking involved. You can just use an Apify scraper. That's it. You don't need agentic stuff for that. So cool, this brings us down to the decisions. Like, when would I use N8N? Why would I add LLMs to N8N workflow if I have to do all of this stuff manually? And you're probably right. Like, why would you still want to do that? Agentic is becoming way easier to use even in an IDE with things like Claude Code and anti-gravity, as you're very soon going to find out. So why would you want to do that? I probably won't do that moving forward. I won't use N8N with LLMs in them if I have a complex chain. If I have like one LLM that needs to go in a very simple workflow inside N8N, I'll probably still use that. If I have the same action that needs to be done many times, if I'm just scraping something like a bunch of leads and I still have some Apify credits that I'm going to use within a workflow, I would use it for something like that, more basic automation tasks like it was automatically built for. Or I might incorporate it within an agentic workflow, but not necessarily built in N8N. So I would build the entire thing in an IDE, like anti-gravity, and I might incorporate my N8N workflow via the API or something like that to do a whole bunch of other tasks that are more deterministic. So there are tons of ways you can do this. But if I'm choosing to specifically add an agent into N8N, it's probably going to start getting a lot more limited for me. And then specifically for agentic, you want to be using that when you're looking at doing complex actions with tons of LLMs and things like that in there to get a whole bunch of different varied tasks done where you might need this React loop taking place for you. So never ever use factory tools when employees can solve those problems for you autonomously. And now's the part where we're going to jump into migrating my tool from N8N into this agentic workflow. Okay, so here we are at the N8N workflow. Now, I have a full video on what this thing actually does that I posted a few months ago. This is version 3. The one I posted was version 1. But essentially, this is the brain of the operation, and it is entire sales prospecting with intent signals and a whole bunch of other complex things that we actually have going on here. So I'm not going to go through the whole tool because this is more about agentic than the workflow, but we need to understand it at a high level. So what this thing does is it researches all the leads that we bring in from Apollo that already have high buying intent, dumps it in a Google spreadsheet. When it sees that, it starts to run through here. So it will scrape the person's profile using a relevance AI scraper. Then Perplexity will go and do a whole bunch of research on whatever we want to do. In this case, it's looking for buying signals, any achievements, new funding rounds, things like that within companies. Then the next one is that it builds a profile. So based on the LinkedIn profile, it then scrapes all of the information, compiles it into a report, and it finds angles for which we can reach out to these people as its basis. Then we have similarities. So it compares me if I'm doing the outreach or whoever the salesperson is. It compares that to the lead profile to find similarities for common ground. Then it finds any pain and gain signals, so it knows who we are, what our company does, what we're trying to sell, who we're trying to sell to. And then it tries to mimic offers based on the intent signals like funding rounds or did they speak about AI, did they speak about any of their problems openly. It finds those things based on our research, and it builds a whole bunch of entry points into this business based on the pains they have and the gains that we can offer them by solving their problems. Then based on that, it's going to offer a LinkedIn connection request. So you can just click random connection requests, and often that works just as well as sending personalized connection requests. But for specific people, especially if they're C-level, they're a little bit more precious. So they might want a specific reason to connect this person who is a complete stranger in their network. So this gives the information in here that we need in order to achieve that. So this thing over here takes all the research that we have and it decides the best input to reach out to this specific person. And then it writes it for us. And then finally, we have this generator over here. So this can generate emails. And in this case, it's doing LinkedIn DMs. So it has a set of 3 DMs, hyper-personalized, based on all the information we find out about the company and the person. It's a pretty complex workflow, and it works really well so far from what I've used it and the clients that I've set it up for. Then after it's done that, it splits DMs and emails 1, 2, 3, and it dumps it back into the sheet. Now, depending on the client that I'm working for, some of them have a whole bunch of Salesforce things that this integrates into. If we generate the emails as well, it will go into Instantly and create email 1, 2, 3. For me, I've integrated this with HeyReach. So I have custom LinkedIn templates for my LinkedIn outreach for every single person, including the connection request, all automated, which is pretty amazing. And then it will just loop over it 25 times. I've got this retry loop over here. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with this thing. It works amazingly at N8N. Does cost a reasonable amount of money, I would say. I think the cost is still less than $1 per lead. Could probably make the prompts a bit better, but anyway, that's not why we're here. So it chucks it into the simple spreadsheet. I've removed everything in here except my own profile, just for the case of my editor not having to redact any information. But you can see here, we've got the emails written, very high level at the moment, looks a bit untidy, not the point of this demo. Cool, so I think that pretty much wraps up at a high level what I wanted to show you, because again, if you want to watch the full overview of what this tool can do, you can check out the video on the screen. But otherwise, I'm going to show you how easy it is to actually build this entire thing inside an IDE using an agentic workflow, and we'll run through the agentic workflow, how it works, why we're doing it, and why I want to do this moving forward. But I think it's going to be pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so here we are at our IDE, and IDE is essentially just an integrated development environment. That's what software developers use to build all the stuff that they build efficiently. So we're going to run Claude Code within VS Code. I wanted to use Google's anti-gravity, but there's a big issue with it at the moment, and every time I run something, it starts to break somewhere down the line and gets stuck in a retry loop with the software itself, not from an agentic side of things. So I'm not going to deep dive into how IDEs work and how to do all of this stuff at a low level. What I want to do is just map the theoretical stuff that we spoke about in the beginning of this video. I want to map it to show you what it looks like practically. So what we have over here is our main system prompt. And this is the thing that, if you think of our workforce analogy, it governs the entire building. So the agent, which we're going to speak to now, will listen to this thing first before it starts to do any other work for us. And I can't take full credit for building this one. Nick Sarif, shout out to you, amazing content that he's putting out. And he had a really awesome way of breaking down this agentic workflow into specific folders. So for the most part, the analogies remain the same between anyone who tries to explain it, with the workforce one that I'm using being one of the most common ones. And Nick's got his own way of explaining it that's also really awesome. But the cool thing that he does in his video is he breaks everything down and he gives it into a specific folder, which is something a lot of software developers do as well. So it's a really good concept to help the teaching thing here, but also to understand it from our perspective as well, as you'll soon find out. So let me just put my glasses on, because yes, this face does wear glasses from time to time. So we've got our company handbook at the top, and this is explaining how the workforce operates. You're the manager at an AI workforce. Here's the problem you solve. LLMs are probabilistic. You need to be more deterministic. You bridge this gap, essentially. Then we explain why this exists to give the AI more context. And then we go into our workforce structure, which is what we covered at the beginning of this slide. So we have the SOPs. Now, this is the company handbook SOP. And then we're going to have on the left-hand side here a bunch of folders. We'll have a folder with SOPs within it. And then the manager, who is the AI role. This is the AI that we're going to be speaking to throughout and who does all the agentic stuff. We've given it just a few guardrails about you must always use the SOPs in order to get your job done. And you use the employees in order to help you get that job done. The employees will also end up in their own folder here on the left. And these are going to be the deterministic things that do the job for us. For instance, it could be API calls, it could be data processing, whatever it is that we want to do. And then we just give it some rules on how it operates and things like that. I'm not going to go into it in depth, but essentially this governs everything that we're going to do. So it's really easy to start. All we need to do is say, let's initialize the workflow. And what it's going to do is it's going to respond and it's going to read through here to see what its main objective is, because we've given it this markdown file. So it's looking through here, seeing what it needs to do. It's probably going to create all the folders that we need to do. And if you come down here, allow this bash command, obviously we want to do it. Something on this, for me, I've pretty much allowed it to have full permissions to do whatever the hell it wants to do, because I just want it to do it autonomously. Now, if you were using this in an environment like in production, or you're using this on client side, you've got to be super careful doing something like that. Because if you don't constrain this agentic flow, this is just a folder on my drive. But if you don't constrain it to a specific folder, and you, for instance, created this working environment just at the root level of the drive, you're going to create a massive problem, because this thing could potentially hallucinate and do RM minus RF and just delete the whole drive, all the contents on it, something like that. So you got to think about what you're doing before you give something full permissions. But me, I really don't care. I just want this thing to do things as fast as possible, because that's generally how I work, right? So you can see here it's initializing the environment. It's creating our employee folder, our SOPs folder, our .env file. So this is going to have all of our variables that we need in our environment. That's going to be our API keys for relevance and perplexity and things like that. And I don't know why it keeps asking me, despite the fact that I wanted to keep doing it. There's also a setting somewhere up here. So if you're running VS Code and you wanted to get rid of that thing, it should come away by doing this. Just type in Claude, allow bypass permissions. So I'm not sure why it's not abiding to that, but anyway. Cool. So the AI workforce has now been initialized. That's great news. You can see we've got a quick start guide. So where is that? That's our README. So here it is. AI workforce, quick start guide, add your API keys, blah, 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 blah. Cool. So we're not going to do any of that right now. This main SOP that we have in our environment, this claude.md. So this is what we built now. But now we need to migrate my tool that we had in N8N. We're going to put it into this agentic layout to see what we can get away with. Okay, so I'm just going to speak to this thing now and I'm going to tell it exactly what I want it to do. So what I want you to do next is to analyze the JSON content that I'm about to paste in, go through it line by line, make sure you understand what the tool does. It is a sales research and prospecting and enrichment tool. I want the exact same functionality or better in our new environment. Please do the migration for me step by step and think about it accurately. So now I'm just going to paste in my JSON that I copied, and this is the exact exported N8N workflow in JSON format. And now this thing's going to run away, and let's see what it does. It's probably going to take at least 10 minutes, so this part of the video will be cut, specifically because I don't expect you to sit around while I'm drinking water. But when something interesting happens, then I will check in and I will make sure that we're actually showing you how this thing thinks, how it self-heals, and how it does everything that it needs to do. Because one of the awesome things about this is that you don't even really need to think anymore, which is a terrible thing if you think about it, because critical thinking is really what separates us from a lot of other people or a lot of other things out there. So if we can now come in here and we don't have to think critically anymore, we can just say, not working, fix it, not working, fix it. What does that do to younger people who are obviously not going to focus on spending brain energy? So it's a big problem. Because if I look back on the 12 years of my career, a lot of that was spent obviously learning things on the fly, adapting really fast, how to use my brain in stressful situations without knowing a single thing about what I was doing. That's how you get adaptability, right? But this thing is going to remove that, because if I have a problem, I'm just going to use AI to help now. And more so, if I'm building something, it's far easier to just say, not working, fix it. But I suppose if you're already experienced and you're somewhere around my age, maybe a bit younger, and you have got some experience, the great thing is that this will just make you like 100 times smarter than anyone else, because you have that critical thinking and you have this thing that is unlimited intelligence, really, to help your critical thinking be even better, which is why it's so important. But anyway, let's have a look at what it did here. So it started by creating a to-do list, which is pretty awesome. So you can see it's thinking about this step by step. Analyze the N8N workflow to understand the complete data flow. So that's step one of what it's doing. And then it went in and it did the workflow analysis. And then it's finished. It shows here. It scrapes, it researches, it analyzes, and it stores. That's pretty much exactly what it does at a high level. So then it updates the to-dos. Create an SOP for lead research and prospecting. And you can see here, it's done that. So research leads. This is our first SOP for the actual tool that we have migrated. So you can see here, again, just a reminder, the SOP is the overall goal or task that we want this specific workflow to achieve. Goal, transform a LinkedIn URL into a complete research package with personalized outreach content, connection request, and 3 DM sequence, pain point analysis, and automation opportunities. Pretty good. Not entirely accurate. I must have left something somewhere about automation in V1 of the code that I exported. But for the most part, it's still going to show us exactly what we need to do, and the tool runs in the exact same way. Otherwise, it's pretty good. What it's doing here, it's telling us the goal. This is the thing the agent is going to work towards. And then it's telling us the employees that it has to use, the employees being the tools. So scrapeleads.py, research with perplexity.py. And if we go into employees, we can see here it started building out our Python scripts. Scrape LinkedIn, which it should be using relevance for. So this is all in Python code. I'm not a software developer, so I don't know a single thing about this. I can kind of read it because Python is very readable. I just wonder if it is actually using the relevance AI node. Was it smart enough to know that? It almost, there we go. Cool. So it is using an API to get this done. There you go, relevance. Cool, so it's baked it in. And if we look at research with Perplexity, so same thing here, it's using Python and it's going to reach out to the Perplexity API so that it can get exactly what it needs to do just using this tool. So as you can see, these are all deterministic things. I need it to do exactly this thing. It must behave this way. It must do it in order for the agent to achieve its probabilistic goal. So we're constraining that probabilistic nature into something of a specific goal without limiting its intelligence to solve the problem by itself, which is the whole goal of Agentic. Analyze with OpenAI. So these are the nodes that are going to connect with OpenAI to actually generate the DMs and to analyze all of the leads that we bring into the system, which is really cool. So let's see what it's doing now. It's still going through its to-do list. Build prompts, directory with all analysis prompts. Cool, sounds good. You can see here it's busy writing lead profile.txt, similarities. In the future, I'll be making a ton of improvements with this. Probably be integrating this with HeyReach via this method as opposed to using N8N. If I have to use N8N, I will, but we'll see what we can get away without actually using N8N at all. Interesting that it's building prompts in here. I imagine that it's using this as some form of variable that it's going to inject into one of the tools later. Pretty interesting. First run round, it didn't do this at all. It just kind of baked in a standard prompt methodology within the tool itself. And it's also interesting. So what it's done here is it's taken the actual prompt from N8N because it's put in the variables that I had in N8N in order to achieve its goal. So it'll be interesting to see how this runs. But the great thing, again, if it doesn't run, it will fix and we can just talk to it, which is the whole point of this. Cool, so we've done our prompts and now it's thinking again, what to do next, what to do next. Let's drop down. Let me create the last prompt for the DM sequence. Okay, still writing prompts. This has taken quite some time for the prompts. And then it is going to update the Google Sheet. We need that one, obviously, because that's how we integrate with everything. But so far, so good. Is it copying my exact prompts? Yeah. It's copying the exact prompt that I had. Alrighty, so it's finally finished the prompts. You can see now it wants to update the Google Sheet.py. And that's obviously how we communicate between Google Sheets. So it's super important. Hopefully it's going to take into account that we're going to need some form of OAuth in order to log into Google Sheets because everything is in the cloud here. I don't know why salespeople use Sheets so much. It's almost kind of ingrained in them to use it because every time I implement a sales tool for a team, they're always using Sheets and they always want their data to go to Sheets. And if you look at tools like Clay, it's literally a spreadsheet with really smart AI baked into it. So it's quite interesting. Me personally, I hate reading out of a spreadsheet. Not exciting, but I guess I'm not in sales. So here is our Google Sheets. Did it factor in OAuth? Authenticate and return Google Sheets service. I think so. Yep, there it is. I mean, it's pretty crazy. This would have taken ages, historically, for somebody to do. And I can just sit here and like twiddle my fingers while this thing works. Pretty amazing. Cool. Now it wants to do a bash command. Yes, do it and never ask me again. It's writing the research lead. So we've done our prompts. Okay, and then finally here you can see it's creating a usage guide for us, which will be pretty handy. And it seems to have done that. So we're almost finished this. Let me create a final summary showing the complete directory structure to the user. Let's do that. In the meantime, wow, what is it doing here? So we've got a README. So migration completed. I've successfully migrated your N8N sales research workflow into an employee substructure. That's cool. Here's what we built. Core structure, research lead. That's the main orchestration script. .env, API credentials, makes sense. Requirements, usage, blah, 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 blah. Cool. So those seem to be most of the components. We need to install our dependencies. Did you not do that for me? Anyway, we don't need to do any of that. We can ask it to do it. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to understand why the hell it put this thing here. If it is over here. Oh no, that's the MD. Right, okay. So this is the Python file and that is the markdown version. Got it. This is the Python script that's actually going to initiate the entire workflow. Cool. So let's test this thing. I'll just grab my LinkedIn URL and see what it can output. Cool. So let's give it a test run. Use this profile. So we put in my profile, and it's a pretty strange concept to me because I keep wanting to like click on something or run something or make something do something, but I'm not. I'm just giving it what it wants. And honestly, I'm not going to do any effort in this. I refuse. I refuse to put any effort into this. I'm going to see what I can get away with without putting in any effort, apart from me speaking to it. So let's see what we can do. Installing some dependencies because we knew it would have to do that. It told us over here. And I'm probably going to have to get my API keys, which I'm going to do off screen as well. And I'm going to add them to this .env file right over here. You can see it's already put everything in place where I need it to be. Oh, wow. It even grabbed the correct API. No, that's the old one. Phew. Okay, so I don't need to nuke it. But point being, this is where I'm going to be putting my API keys. Cool. So again, you can see here things were missing and it needed them. So it thought about what it needed and then it went and now it's getting them. And yes, just keep doing it. You don't need to ask me for permission. Yes, run it in Python 3. So now it's trying to run our script. Let's see what it does. So there it's going for my profile. What it should be doing is it should be calling the relevance API, and I imagine it will hit a roadblock because I haven't put in my API key yet. So it's testing to see why it can't do it. And then it's going to come back with some suggestions if it still can't do it over and over again. It might tell me, hey, I can't seem to get through. The error code is this. Perhaps it means it's your API key. But in this case, it seems to have worked. Which means that this API key on screen is my real one. So Andrew, you're going to have to edit this out, please. Thank you. Yeah, so it just realized that it needs the keys for Perplexity and OpenAI, which it doesn't have. Trying to grab them. There's still placeholders. They are, yes. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. Replace these placeholders. Okay. So let's see what it actually did. Your N8N workflow successfully migrated. Here's what was built. Yeah, we already know all of this. To complete the full test, cool. So now it knows that it needs me to add these. So this API key at the top is correct. It needs me to add my other two, and then Google Sheets. It's probably going to ask me for OAuth by the time we get round to that. So let me put in my credentials quickly and we'll run this again. Okay, I've updated my Perplexity key and my OpenAI key. Please run through the process again, use the same profile, and see if we can make the whole thing work this time. So I couldn't find information about my company, or there's limited data. That's okay. Pain and gain. One analysis failed. O1 model issue. Really? I have an O1 mini? And then Google Sheets. That's not a minor issue. I mean, that's a pretty big issue. This thing is really just breaking it down into the small thing, but it's part of our entire workflow. 60 seconds per lead, cost 50 to 75 cents. Really? I think you're making up a bit of stuff there. But for now, the Google Sheets is super important to the workflow. We need to make sure that it's working. Can you fix it? I want to be able to see the lead that you research end up in my Google Sheets. I'm not going to give it too much of a clue either. I want to see if it's able to figure it out. There we go. Step 1, get Google Cloud credentials. So the first thing that it did was check OAuth. Perfect. Didn't even have to tell it. I did not have to spoon feed it a single thing. So what should happen next is this thing should give me ideally a link to click to verify I am who I say I am and sign in with my Google account. We'll see if that happens. And then we know that this thing is working properly, because it should update what we need to. Okay, quick setup steps. Go to Google Cloud Console, blah, blah, blah. Download JSON, rename it to credentials.json. I don't want to do any of that. You can do it for me. So I will create that JSON file and then I'm going to paste it in here, and this thing can go away and do everything that I want it to do. Because again, I'm trying to do as little as possible here. So let me find my creds. Okay, so I've pasted in the JSON file with the credentials. I want you to set it all up for me so that we can get my Google Sheets working. So all I've done is I've pasted in the OAuth that it needs in order to do the thing that it wants to do. And I don't want to do any of the work. So I pasted it in and it's going to go away and do it for me in an ideal world. But we're going to force it. We're going to make sure that this thing does that. There we go. Look at that. So it opened up my authentication. Now I need to allow it. This will allow My Leads app to see, edit, create, and delete all Google Sheets and spreadsheets. Wow, that sounds pretty dangerous. I hope I have nothing special in my company's Google Sheets. So again, you want to be careful what you're giving permission to, especially with a tool like this. If you give it something for your entire G drive or something like that, you never know what it could do, so just keep that in mind. You can see here, credentials loaded, authentication successful, so it's created the token.json that we needed, found the LinkedIn URL column within the spreadsheet, and it's ready to use this thing. Now let's run the complete workflow to upload your research to Google Sheets. So now it's going to run through everything again, and for the most part, because it's comparing me with me, I think that's also a little bit why it's feeling a bit weird about how to approach this thing and why there's certain information that it can't kind of pin together. But for the most part, your workflow is ready. You can now research any LinkedIn profile. Everything is working. I will be the judge of that. Okay, so here we are. Surprise, it works, which is pretty awesome. You can see here, it's got my LinkedIn profile. It's got all the research that we have thrown into the spreadsheet. It's got our connection request message. Hey Mansel, noticed your team at Atomic Ops is pioneering AI consultancy in boutique style. Curious how you balance custom solutions with scalable strategies. Must be quite a tightrope. So arguably some of these things we could tweak. Here's email 1, here's email 2, and email 3. So that's cool, but this is obviously not flashy, and I imagine you were hoping for something magical that just satiates that dopamine hit that you really want. But the truth is, with boring systems like this, you've got to think of it in this way. Would you rather have something that does this, which was the original sales tool that I built? So you could log in, and in there was a whole bunch of databases and beautiful graphical user interface where you could click research on a specific lead and all of that. And it's really cool and it looks great for YouTube. But in reality, what a business wants, and you've got to think about your own return on investment here. Would you rather have something like this where you can log in and yes, it looks good? Or would you rather have something boring like this, but with this boring thing, we can then go and automate with something like Hey Reach. So it then goes out on LinkedIn while you're sleeping, contacts people, so you wake up with people replying to the messages that you've sent. And that's far better because it requires no effort for you at all. It's like literally having inbound agentic marketing, which I don't know if that exists or not, but either way, it's a really cool concept. You basically have a team that is just bringing leads to you, and that's what it's much better to have as a business. So why don't we see if we can actually make that happen now? Cool. So we're back in our workflow. I know that you can integrate this with Hey Reach. I've done it before. So here's my Hey Reach test pod, and it's easy enough to integrate with N8N. So historically, if I wanted to integrate this with N8N, I would just add N8N into here by adding extra nodes onto the end of this. So there are two ways you could do it. You could either have your data going into Google Sheets so that you can manipulate it into other systems as well. And then after your team has checked that message 1, 2, 3 is actually legit and ties in with the information that they have, you could have something like a little tick box over here. And as soon as that is ticked, then it goes through the next part of your N8N workflow and it uploads it into a Hey Reach campaign so that you can send message 1, 2, 3 automatically and the request on LinkedIn. So if we come into campaigns, let's just go to this one. If we view the workflow, So you can see we've got this here. So ideally what we would want it to do is come in for campaign start. So if connection, if we're not connected, don't delay, send a connection request, wait 3 days, not accepted, and then you can add more things. If they do accept, then obviously we want to wait a day or two, like some posts, stuff like that, and then send the first message. So what we need to do here is we've got li message 1, and then this was a test message to my wife on LinkedIn. But you can see here, this is just a variable. So this is all decided within HeyReach, and we set all of this up already. So traditionally, I would run this with N8N. Now, because we're trying to get away from N8N, not realistically, but just to see what we can actually do from the agentic front without having to pay for any of this other stuff, that's the purpose of this quest. So what we need to do is, I think I'm going to skip having the tick box, and I'm just going to have this thing run fully autonomously and upload stuff into my HeyReach campaign. So we're going to use the same test campaign. Now, I've never done it without using N8N integration. So I'm just going to speak to this thing like I've been doing the entirety of this video and see if it can actually figure out how to connect with the HeyReach API so that it can connect itself and do what we want it to do. Maybe even bypassing the spreadsheet, because why do we need that if we're going down this fully automatic route? It could just research 20 leads that we ask it to, and then essentially upload it to HeyReach. So why don't we try that? Okay, cool. So everything is working now. The next step, I want you to connect with HeyReach. If you don't know what HeyReach is, do some research on heyreach.io, check its API manual, and see how we can integrate our leads into a HeyReach campaign. I know we can use variables within HeyReach, so ideally we need to figure out how we can contact the API, and then we can decide whether we're going to upload a spreadsheet or whether we're going to integrate directly with each row within HeyReach. That might be a bit long, but let's see what it comes back with. Perfect. Let me research HeyReach and their API. That sounds good. Okay, so we can see here that it found something. It's pretty much learned the API summary for itself, understands what it needs, and now it's going to build the integration into our workflow. And I will laugh if this works. Another thing, so if this doesn't work, something that would be cool to test would be to see if this thing can actually build our N8N workflows for us. So if it needed the functionality but it couldn't directly access the API, can it build us the N8N workflow that we need in order to access the API? That would be cool to see, because then I don't have to drag and drop anything, which really would make my life even easier. So here it's built something, push leads to HeyReach SOP. That's cool. After researching a lead, push their profile and personalize outreach to HeyReach campaigns for automated LinkedIn outreach. Amazing. So it's even built itself an SOP on exactly what it needs to do. Yes, please, and don't ask me again. Okay, so now it's building the credentials that we need for the API. I'm going to have to go and give it this stuff. So I can potentially do this off screen. Okay, so it looks like it's searching for the API now, or at least it's building the .env for us to stash our API keys in. So hopefully that means that I can grab it from HeyReach and I'll chuck it into the .env. HeyReach integration complete. I've built the complete integration, blah, blah, blah. Documentation. Wow, that is cool. Built our tools, our employee scripts, so they know exactly what they need to do. Configuration goes in there. How it works. After researching a lead, you can push them to HeyReach with 8 custom variables. Custom connection message, custom DM123, custom bio, custom company interests and facts. That is awesome. Get your HeyReach API key. That's amazing. You know, because I didn't know exactly where to find it. Log into HeyReach, go integrations, HeyReach API, copy key and add it to .env. Find my list ID. So it's given me exact step-by-steps on how to do this as well, which is pretty amazing. So I'm going to do this, and with the magic of editing, we'll be back as soon as my API key is in. Okay, so my API key is loaded. Now the next step is to find the list ID. I don't know where that is. I'm looking in here, but I'm guessing that this little tool is going to go and fetch it for me. So let's just get this thing to do it. Cool. So I've added my API key. Can you see if you can connect to the API and find my list ID? Honestly, this is just amazing. I feel like I'm going to build an entire workforce of these agents to do everything for me so I can make myself obsolete as a cybersecurity and AI consultant. And then I can just chill, make music, kick back while my digital workforce works for me for very little amounts of money. Good news, your API key is 200. That's awesome. Yes, do a web search. Okay, so we have API functionality, it seems, but we got a 404. Let me verify, and there we go. So it fixed it, it got the 200, okay. Let me search the actual available API endpoints. So it's trying to figure out what it can find out for us and how we can interact with the API. So we don't even have to provide that to it. So coming back to the whole front end thing, you see a lot of videos right now that show building like a $5,000 or $10,000 web page or a $50,000, $100,000 web app. But again, like I said in the beginning of this video, you have to focus on putting yourself in the position of people who are going to be using these things, because it's awesome having all of this stuff and it's amazing to create these things. But a lot of the time, business owners and people who run massive companies, they don't care about any of that. All they care about is the outcome, the results. They don't want anything flashy. They just want to go and live life and hit their markers and get their goals, to get their bonus, get promoted, whatever the hell their desire is in life. It's not related to having this beautiful thing that was technologically created for them. They don't care. They just want the outcome. So when you're building something, don't just try and make it flashy. On YouTube, yes, you kind of need to do that because people love the flashy stuff. But if you're doing it in real life, think about it from what you would want. Would you want to put in the effort, or would you want the thing done for you? And that's obviously why we hire people. And that's why Agentic works so well, because we're technically hiring staff when we're doing this kind of thing. So it's still doing a bunch of stuff. I've just been saying yes to whatever it's asking for. I haven't actually been reading while I've been talking to you guys, but it looks like it's fetching a bunch of things here. Something to do with GitHub. So it went to some dude's GitHub. It's for the MCP. Okay. So he's going to, so our agent is getting the MCP list so that it can integrate with HeyReach's MCP server, which is pretty handy. Let me try a few more endpoint variations. I think it thought the original design that it had would be a lot easier, and now it's trying to make up for the fact that it built something that might not have worked. We'll find out soon enough. Here's your practical solution. Oh, wait. I'm unable to find a working endpoint for listing lists. It appears this might not be publicly available. Log into HeyReach, go to lists or campaigns in the left sidebar. Click on the list you want to use, look at the URL. The number is your list ID. Okay, cool. Let's do that. So I'm going to go over here. Let's go to campaigns. I'll take this one. Here's my campaign number over here. Cool. Gonna need my glasses back on. No, because we missed a 2. Like an old man in these videos. Okay, so we got this. Here's my list number. Can you add Mansel shuffle to the campaign? Along with messages 1, 2, 3. I'm already connected to this person. I'll be a little bit more specific. I'll say along with DM. Okay, cool. So it's added the list ID to the exact file that we needed to, and that would be over here in our SOP. Push to HeyReach. No, sorry, that's the env where it added it. So the API key is there. Great, I'm going to have to nuke all of this now. Maybe Andrew, you can redact this. Cool, so now it's going and getting 404s because it can't access a specific endpoint. So it's trying to find a way around that by testing different HeyReach endpoints. I wonder if it's going to be able to do this. It got a 200 earlier for the API, but perhaps it can't do this unless it can figure out how to integrate with the MCP. Here's what's happening. The HeyReach API documentation appears to be outdated. The endpoints that were documented, blah, blah, blah. Contact HeyReach. I'm not going to do that. Use make. We're not going to do that. Come on. Export from your Google Sheet. What if we explore the HeyReach MCP server? They have one. Is there any way we can use that to get what we want? Otherwise, let's go with option 3. Okay, it's going to see if it can use the MCP server. Yes, just fetch it. I bet there's a way to do this. But rather than just ramble on this video for a long time, I will see if I can figure that out off screen, if this thing couldn't figure it out. But we will do MCP route. If that doesn't work, then we'll just try the manual route, and I'll see if this can build us our N8N JSON file that we need to just kind of interact. So I wouldn't add it to my existing workflow. I'll keep my workflow as it is, and I'll get it to build a new one, and then just do all of its work within here and just do the last little bit of HeyReach integration via N8N. So let's see if it can do that. Node.js is installed in your system. We have 2 paths. Awesome. Okay, so it's saying that this is what we need. It can run an HTTP server and can be called programmatically. Okay, so let's do option A. Let's go with option A. It seems like the best choice. I can't actually believe that this works. Okay, you can see here, it started the Reach MCP server in HTTP mode. So far, so good. Server is up and running. Testing the server health. The server is healthy. Now let me create a Python employee to interact with the MCP server. Pretty crazy. Reach MCP client. Here you can see we've got our employee, and it looks like it knows everything that it needs to do. HTTP error 400 though. It's making some updates to this file because it realizes that what it set up first is not actually working. So now it's trying to fix that problem. But I think whether this works or not, it is irrelevant. I think I've already proven the point of the video is that this is insane in the sense that it builds everything for itself, and ultimately, even if we have to go down the N8N route just for a specific thing, that's not necessarily an agentic problem. It's more of a connectivity issue from Reach's side and the limitations of their own API. So you got to think of it from that perspective. Like, what can't you do with this tool? You're only limited by external tools functionalities. And what does this actually mean for SaaS? How long is SaaS going to be around for businesses? Like, if you could have a team of 2 or 3 actual developers who know software development and they have tools like this, you can build and host all of your own internal tools that are self-healing, self-propagating, and can work autonomously for you so that you don't even need to hire people to use the tool to get the thing that you want to get done, which is just mental to say out loud. So the MCP server is requiring SSE, streaming sessions, which is more complex. Okay, so are you going to go and do that for me? Okay, so a lot of stuff has happened off screen here, as you can see. We've been exploring MCP, and I also got it to build the N8N workflow. Now, with the N8N workflow, it didn't do a very good job at all. So if we come and have a look here, it knows it needs a webhook potentially to get things in. And then it tried to map the data. I imagine this could potentially be correct because it's just uploading the fields from our custom workflow. But then it just kind of lost hope on what the hell to do. So we're not currently there yet. I mean, maybe if I actually questioned this thing a few times and said, hey, this isn't working, can you go and fix it? Sure, we would have probably gotten something a lot better. But because it's actually started to figure out MCP after I gave it the actual MCP server credentials from my Reach portal, it started to figure things out and understand what it can and can't do. So I guess prodding, like in most cases, just poking a finger at this thing and asking it to be better. Yeah, there you go. You can actually see them. So connection is working. These are the 2 things that I tested for campaigns. So I had a spray list with just 25 leads, and then my new list is just 1 lead. So that is pretty cool. Yeah, it can find out information. It knows that they're both finished. That is awesome. So it looks like we might be able to do this. So now, did it already add the lead? Let's have a look and see if it added the lead already. Campaigns. Ops, edit campaign, confirm. 2 leads. Yep, that's me. Wait, who are the leads? Let's go back. List of leads, my new list. Okay, my new list. So we come in here and there we go. There we see my wife and there we see me. So it successfully added me to this campaign, which is pretty awesome. Ah, and here's the problem. Okay, so it didn't add our LinkedIn messages. But I'm guessing that could be because we haven't sent it yet. Ah, there we go. Custom connection, custom DM. Perfect. Okay. So it just created new fields within here. So in my original campaign, my test campaign, I have ally message 1, 2, and 3 as the variable, but it's gone and created its own variables that it's using over there. So now if we go back to our campaign, we should see eventually this thing will try and send me a message, but obviously it's not going to work because it's not going to be able to send a message for myself. But this campaign has also finished. So you can see it's now 50%, so it knows that there's a new lead. So if I click resume, it's probably not going to work. Hopefully it doesn't cause some kind of weird thing where they ban me for trying to message my own account from a automated system, but we'll find out. I mean, for the most part, that proves that this is working. So that is awesome, which means now all I need to do is get this thing to scrape a whole bunch of leads, or in this case, because I've already scraped the leads, I can just dump them from a CSV into here, and I can get it to create an entirely new campaign for me. So why don't we try and do that quickly? Okay, so for the final test, what we're going to do is we're going to use a lead that I scraped, my video editor, Andrew. We're going to use him as our guinea pig. We're going to get the system to create us a new campaign, so I won't use an existing one. What this thing will do is it will check our research Excel sheet, and it will pull his name from there. It will put it through the system so that we get all of the agentic stuff, tailors the messages to him. I can't do the connection request message because he's already connected to me, but for the most part, we'll be able to see it send DM1, hopefully, if everything works. But I'm also going to get it to create us a new campaign, and it will also fill in all of the variables that we need for that campaign specifically. So ideally, this entire thing is going to be hands off. In the real world, what I would do is I would probably get this thing to set up a cron schedule. So a cron schedule is just where it runs on a specific time, day, or whatever. And that will make sure that this thing is entirely autonomous. So while I go fetch leads in Apollo, save them to that spreadsheet, every time it sees new leads over either a specific time or whatever, it would then go and then just keep this funnel pumping. We could have it building new campaigns and things like that in an ideal world. So let's go and do that now. And I'm going to tell it that I just updated the spreadsheet. I just updated the research spreadsheet with a new lead. Can you please grab Andrew Fraser and put him through our entire workflow? Once you've researched him and written the contact messages, please create a new list inside HeyReach, inside a new campaign, and add everything where it needs to be for DMs 1, 2, and 3. I'm already connected with this person, so don't worry about adding the connection request. Let's call our new campaign Video Test Campaign. And let's call our new list Video Editor List. So let's see if it can pull this thing off. It would be pretty crazy if it does, because again, then, wow, I have literally done no zero technical work apart from just kind of pushing on the fact that we can use MCP to do this thing. So pretty crazy, and actually a lot of learning here, because you get to see how this thing thinks. So, you know, if critical thinking is new to you, or thinking in general, you can actually click on these things to see how it goes about finding these things. So it's a really good way for you to actually understand how to do a specific job. For instance, if there's something really technical that you don't know how to do, or you don't even know how to approach thinking about it because everything is new to you, this will help you give a structured framework for your own brain when you're troubleshooting things. Because if you see a lot of people during job interviews and stuff like that, if there's a lot of questions that they don't know, they'll just freeze or they say, I don't know. But a lot of the time what the interviewer is doing is they're just trying to see how your brain solves problems. So if you can figure out a methodology of that for yourself, for instance, they ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, instead of saying, I don't know, you say something like, well, if I had to look to find an answer for that, I would start over here, and then I would do this, and then I would do that. A lot of the time when we're talking technical stuff here, you start the logs. So your first answer is always, well, I'd start the logs, I'd look here for any error codes or this and that, and from there I would look into the next system if it pointed me to another place. Basically, you're just showing people how you connect the dots. And that's just me using some filler to see what this thing is doing in the background. But point being is that I suppose you could use this system to help you be better at solving your own problems as well, which is really where it becomes even more amazing than it is right now. So, whoa, why are you saying that the sheet structure seems complex? Can you provide Andrew Fraser's LinkedIn URL? Yes, I can. Okay, so that's probably where I screwed this whole thing up. So, because I put in a whole bunch of different fields that it wasn't used to, I just copied and pasted things. I tried to be extra lazy. So you know what? I'm going to find his LinkedIn URL, and we can just pretend that this worked, because it would work if I actually stuck to what was in here instead of trying to be lazy. So let me just grab his LinkedIn URL. So let's pretend that this thing ran on a cron schedule and it actually grabbed it. Why is it trying to grab an image? It's not an image, friend. There we go. Yeah, so it just couldn't get into my Google Sheets. Well, it could. Got the row. I see Fraser at row 2, but I need to see the full details. Perhaps it didn't copy into it properly. I think that is the problem. It just didn't copy in here properly. So I'm not going to blame the system. I'm going to blame me, the human. Anyway, we're pretending. So this thing's working. It's now doing its research, it's doing everything that it needs to do. And we're going to see if it does our hey reach thing, because that's going to be our crescendo. So if it doesn't do this, then everything I've recorded has been totally pointless. But we have seen that this works. So if there are still kinks to figure out, then with the magic of editing, nothing will have gone wrong. Perfect, list created, ID. Now I need to check if I can create a campaign via MCP. Looking back at the tools list earlier, I didn't see create campaign. Ah, okay. That's unfortunate. So we can get campaigns, we can add leads to campaigns, but we cannot create campaigns. I don't see create campaign. Let's see if it exists and if it's a tool problem. Follow-up campaign, how do I reach? Can I use MCP? Control find MCP. Use MCP to retrieve leads, filter. Okay, so you can't create campaigns. Well, that's unfortunate. But we can still add it to a campaign. So fine, I will create a new campaign in HeyReach, which I think I already did. Yeah, vid test, okay. Cool, why am I doing that? Cool, I created a new campaign, I called it vid test. Let's add Andrew and all the relevant stuff that we need into vid test. And if possible, via MCP, turn on that campaign so that it's functioning. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a way around this, but I'm not going to let this video trail on for much longer. I just want to see if it does this and sets everything up properly. I'm pretty sure we could figure out a lot of these things. But for a first time run, I think this is pretty good because, again, I haven't had to do much. So ideally this should be moved out of draft stage. I wonder if there is actually hey reach MCP server list. So does this tell us what we can actually do? Core campaign management, check API key, get all campaigns, add leads to a campaign, get lead details, get conversions. So most of it is get. It doesn't seem that you can create new campaigns from here. I'm pretty sure they're probably going to add that in the future. It makes sense to, unless there's some form of security reason they're not doing that. But otherwise, it's not bad. I mean, how many new campaigns are you consistently going to want to create over time? If it wasn't for the fact that I was doing this just on screen to test something, I have no issue just going in here, creating a new campaign, just giving it a name, and then getting my agent to fill everything out and just add the leads like I did the first time we tested this. You can still make it mostly automated, or at least to the point where it's automated enough. So the user created a campaign called vid test. Now I need to find it. And it didn't know how to find it, so it built something to help it figure out how to find something, which is awesome. But also strange because it can just use the MCP server. Why are you trying to use Python for this when you can just use the MCP server for HeyReach that we created to find the campaign name, and then you can just add Andrew to the campaign called vid test. Vid test is no spaces and written all in lowercase. That's the importance of being specific whenever you're speaking to someone or something. You're absolutely right. I have access to MCP tools directly. Wow, I just remembered. HeyReach MCP client. Yes, now you're using your tools. The tools for the job. Really? You still need a campaign ID? That's annoying. Fine. Okay. So if I wanted to automate this, then I would need to give it the campaign ID, which I would probably chuck into the spreadsheet. So I would just create another row here, and I would say I had like 100 leads and I wanted to add them to separate campaigns, then I would just have a campaign ID field and I would put say 20 and then 20 and then 20 and there. And that way this thing would know which campaign ID to add specific leads to. So that would be a way around this. So anyway, I'm just going to come in here. Let's go here and we've got our campaign ID right over here. Let's give it back. There you go. I'm guessing that means it won't be able to turn on the toggle switch either. So that would be some form of manual thing. But once you get it going, you could just keep adding leads to the same campaign anyway. If, like for the most part, if you're just sending message 1, 2, 3 and perhaps a connection request, you're going to be using the same campaign style for most of your people. And then you could have a second campaign if you had a different bunch of people that you wanted to speak to in a different way. So adding phrases to the campaign with all the personalized messaging, it's using the right tools. There we go. Oh my God, you worked the first time. Why are you having this problem? There, but you see it did know that. It did know that. Actually, looking back at the conversation, I successfully added Mansel Sheffield to the campaign. What changed? The SSL error started happening after that. This might be intermittent SSL issues with MCP server. That's awesome. And then it tries to find a way to bypass that. That's amazing. The error is clear. You cannot add leads to a draft campaign. Fine. See, I'm learning along with the machine. So we're going to go back. And okay, I'm going to have to finish this. So I'm not going to add anyone now. I'm just going to have an empty list. Create an empty list. Let's call the list name new list 25. So again, I think a lot of this is just coming down to me not doing this properly the first time. I'm going to click next. And yes, this is my account. I'm not sure why that says free account because I am premium member, unless I've now been banned. Continue. So let's just use one of their templates. I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing at the moment. And I'll go with value first outreach. So I'm just going to confirm this and I'm going to click continue. Okay, fine. InMail, we're not going to send an email to anyone ever because InMail works terribly. We want to be personalized. Cool. So now this thing is on. We have no one added to this. Cool, I've now made it live. The list to add the contact to is called new list inside the campaign. New list 25 actually. Okay. This should get it done. If this doesn't get it done, then consider at the end of the video and pretend that everything worked out the way that we wanted. But it should work. There we go. Added to the vid test campaign. Anything else you want me to do? Well, first I want to check if this is legit information. So we got vid test. We have one person in there. Oh, that's pretty good. One lead, perfect. So let's take a look at what it did over here. New list 25. We got Andrew Fraser. Not sure why he's red. Why are you red? The lead requires matching with LinkedIn, but no action is needed from you. Ah, right, okay, so this is just Hey Reach going to go and find the right person for us based on the URL. Cool. But you can see here, custom message. So if I was connecting with him, then it would send this, but I'm already connected. Custom DM, hey Andrew, blah, blah, blah. What's happening at Nashua? Whole bunch of stuff, I'm sure. Anyway, the point being is that it generated our message. If I really wanted to view the message, I could just hover over it. Hey Andrew, was thinking about Nashua's AI journey. Often, as companies scale AI, balancing personalization with efficiency becomes tricky. Seen any friction point pop up as you integrate with AI deeper? Cool, so I think everything's working for the most part now. There are obviously some things that I need to figure out with this, and I would never present this to anyone. This was more just to show you guys the power of Agentic and that not only does this thing think alongside you, but it can also think for you and for itself most of the time. So if you really understand a product, like I understood how to do this from an N8N perspective, but if I understood exactly how to do this, if I went out there with a specific goal and I wanted to do the thing that I was going to do, This would have been a lot easier. There would have been far less problems, if any, because I could have given it the proper instructions in order for it to achieve its goal. But you can see, for the most part, I gave it very little instruction every single time I used it, and it managed to figure out exactly what we needed to do and put things where they need to be. So hopefully you learned something from this video and you understand the power of these things that we're working with. But also, I want you to understand that you need to separate the things that you see online with all the flashy images and things like that to the business outcomes and the things that people would actually want. Make sure you're always taking that into context whenever you're doing something. So I hope this video was helpful. Leave some comments below and let me know what you want me to build or test or do with Agentic stuff. Otherwise, check the videos on the screen right now. They'll definitely help you on your journey. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.